Welcome to the show. You're listening to The Ecosystem, where we talk with the world's most exceptional entrepreneurs, investors, and emerging growth companies who are all making a difference in the world. The purpose is to be educated, spark a thought, and understand how the ecosystem all work together. All of this brought to you by the team at Fund. This is your host, RJ Pahura. My guest today is Mandy Tahvonen. Mandy is the managing director of Relish Works, the innovation hub of Gordon Food Service, GFS, based in Chicago. For the past 19 years, Mandy has worked in strategy, innovation, and consulting, primarily at Gensler and Dublin. She has a passion for innovation, building new businesses, being the captain of her own ship, and the ability to make things real. In her current role as managing director, she oversees the company's innovation portfolio, determining the focus, approach, and type of projects Relish pursues, and building a team of innovators to help bring new products, services, or tools to life to benefit GFS and the communities we serve. For more information, check out fundecosystem.com. Without further ado, let's give it up for Mandy Tahvonen. All right, so we're going to talk about something that is absolutely near and dear to 100% of the listeners' hearts here, which is food.
Yes.
So welcome, Mandy. Mandy is the managing director of Relish Networks, which is a food and innovation hub here in the Chicagoland area. This is a big episode for anyone who's interested in CPG, logistics, restaurant tech.
Absolutely.
Cool. So welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, would love to know a little bit more about your background as it relates to Relish Works and corporate innovation, really as a whole. This is big for any of the foodies. That food service, food, CPG, everyone
really
in the space.
Touching all of those spaces. You know, Relish Works was established by Gordon Food Service.
Okay.
And Gordon Food Service is...
GFS. Yes, the big trucks.
Big white trucks.
Yes, that we see everywhere in Chicagoland.
Yes, with big pictures of food in red font.
Mirror trucks at that, right?
Yes. So, you know, Gordon Food Service is a wholesale distribution company. It's 122 years old.
Okay.
And they're family owned, family managed. And what's so awesome about them is that they have this commitment and this desire to live on as a family managed company in perpetuity, which is very rare these days.
Yeah.
And they've played in the food space for 122 years.
Wow.
And when they, you know, the family's still very much involved, the CEO had a vision to protect and prepare the organization for change by establishing an innovation hub called Relish Works.
So they've gone through a few generations.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is this the third generation that's operating it?
So Rich Wolowski is the first non-family member CEO.
Okay.
He's been in the position for 3 years. The second generation, or the third generation rather, is on the board.
Okay. Awesome.
Yes. And, you know, when they established Relish Works, they really wanted to make sure that they could be prepared for the changes in distribution as a whole, the changes in the space of food, recognizing that consumers' preferences around food have completely and totally changed. The way in which we think about eating at home or eating in restaurants has completely changed. And technology has evolved the way that we interact with food even.
Absolutely.
So we were established to do three things. One is conceptualize, build, and launch our own startups. The second is invest in other startups in a handful of mechanisms. And three, create new partners in the space to see what we might be able to do together, recognizing that mature and legacy companies have traditionally gone it alone, and they're ahead of the game and recognizing that they won't be able to do that in the future.
Right. Interesting. So GFS, again, 122 year old company. How did they get into this space? Is it to continue the legacy then, or innovation in food service, or is it a particular part of CPG?
Restaurant operators and food service operators are the heartbeat of Gordon Food Service. That's who we sell our product to. And it's really thinking about what are their needs in the market and bringing that back and thinking about ways that we might be able to help those food service operators navigate this changing landscape that's happening around them.
Which is brilliant. So you guys are looking at the total ecosystem, seeing what's needed, implementing some of that change in technology, and then funding it to build and grow the future
yes, absolutely.
ecosystem. Okay.
And think about what are these, recognizing our customer needs.
Yeah.
And what are the solutions we should build and own ourselves?
Right.
What are the solutions that we should just invest in? Because there's a lot of smart people playing in this hot content area today. And then who might we just hold hands with?
Right.
And go out in the world together. And, this was the vision of the CEO coming into this, taking on this really kind of meaningful moment in time in the company's history. And he had this idea. And you asked about my path here. I was a consultant at Tahvonen, which is owned by Deloitte, and it's an innovation consulting firm. And I was working with Gordon Food Service as my client.
Okay. So you knew the guts of it.
Yes. Yeah. And so we were, kind of working on what innovation meant for them, what Relish Works would do with the organization and how it would be helpful. And I decided that I was inspired by the mission and wanted to join.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very niche and specific focus in the market, right? I don't know of any other accelerator programs and funds like this. How old is it?
We're only 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, we just had our 2-year birthday.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So tell me more. Tell me more about what else does Relish Works do?
Yeah. So, primarily, those 3 things that I mentioned, conceptualize and build our own startups, invest and partner. A couple of examples of some of the startups that we've launched. One is a company called Poolside that's now a separate entity. And that company is a matching platform for restaurant staff.
Okay.
So labor shortage is one of the biggest challenges that restaurant operators are facing today. So we recognize that need. The founder recognized that need. She came up with the concept and has developed a technology that makes it easier to find hourly workers at your restaurant.
Awesome.
Another one is we're thinking about specialty ingredients, which are, might be a seasonal, might be a special menu item,
Sure.
but those are often hard to get outside of a case or to know exactly when you might get it. So we created a specialty company called Hors d'oeuvre.
Okay.
And you can, as a chef looking for, I don't know, scorpions or something to add to a garnish, right. You might be able to go on there and find something as wild as that, okay. Or something as simple as a hot sauce or something that really kind of sets your menu item apart. And another one that we're launching, the first version will go out in March, is a group reservations app that makes it easier to find and reserve spaces for groups.
Awesome. So it sounds so interesting. You said it's like strategic partnerships, corporate development, and the investing, right? Those are 3 areas. So what is the corporate development like? Is that more of an accelerator type model where these companies are coming in and they get to work with people that are tenured such as yourself and have the experience?
Well, when we have, when we have startups come into our space, we primarily do it in 2 ways. One is we identify a business need that exists in the main Gordon Food Service business and connect a startup to them, and we manage in-market learnings or pilots.
Awesome.
But more formally, we have our Food Foundry Accelerator program.
Okay.
And that's in partnership with 1871 and Gordon Food Service.
Excellent.
And it's a 16-week program that where the startups come into our space 1 week a month, and they learn from they go through 1871 programming. We have a group of mentors that they have access to, Relish skill sets and resources are applied to the program, and Gordon Food Service. I think one of the things that we learned most after our first cohort was that the startups really, it's hard to get access to these large, kind of mature companies and really understand how it works. So they were really excited when we got the feedback. It was, wow, the access to GFS has been so important to us.
Right. Like the money's one thing, but the opportunity to work with you guys as a very strategic partner who has been doing it for 122 years is even bigger. Could be a game changer.
Yeah. And our head of sales came in and talked with them, our CFO, our chief legal officer. So we were able to kind of give them the perspective in the ways in which this large company thinks about their business and really has this deep expertise to bring and to offer to the startups kind of a like, if you want to play,
sure,
these are some of the things that we consider.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's on the accelerator side, you've got that. How many companies do you typically take in?
So in our first cohort, we had 5, and we're getting ready to kick off our second cohort in January, and we will have 7 companies.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for all the foodies out there that are wondering how they partner with you, what do you look for?
This year,
how did you narrow it down to the 5 and then to the 7?
Yeah. So we went through a process of both taking into consideration what we learned last year. This year, we had leaders from Gordon Food Service participate in the interview process, so we could better align the startups with the needs of the business so that we can take advantage of that scale and that expertise. So we got down to 7, and we needed them a little bit further this year. We wanted them to have some revenue, be generating revenue, still early stage. We're just really excited about what's to come, and we're really proud of the success that our first cohort has experienced since leaving the program.
Sure. So is it something to where it sounds like you're making an investment in them and also like the strategic partnership side, like kind of rolling out your partners and your network to these companies as well? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. So we invest $75,000 for 3%.
Okay.
And
very fair.
Yeah. We did some evaluation of the landscape and kind of determined that this was right for us. And then we are this year taking the cohort to Grand Rapids, where we're headquartered twice.
Okay.
We're being more intentional about setting up these connection points to the right business owners that align with the cohort. And we're just looking forward to getting this launched. It starts January 13th.
Awesome.
So
tell me more about that, or can you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited to be able to tell you the companies. So again, we have 7. We have a company called Sociavore, and they are a website builder and e-commerce platform for restaurants. So they help restaurant operators navigate and get that up and running.
Okay.
Bicky is around CRM for restaurants. Science Retail is a subscription-based IT department for these independent operators. It's really difficult to know how to get all that set up and run a restaurant. So that's a problem they're solving. Tably is an IoT solution, like a wearable kind of ring your server.
Nice. Could use that every now and then.
Solution. Yeah. I can think of times. Augie is around closing out products that have been maybe long on stock. And so we could think about this in kind of the back end of our business.
Okay.
Retail Aware is a center business that it'll really align with our store business. We have retail stores, Gordon Food Service does. So it's really thinking about sensors in the environment. And then Oja Express is around specialty and ethnic grocery delivery.
Very interesting. So these are all like problems that you would think are maybe being solved, but it sounds like when you think of the typical restaurant owner, you think of the mom and pops, the bigger restaurant groups that kind of have it all together, right? I know, I guess for the mom and pops, really, what are some of the, you mentioned some of the companies here, what are some of the corporate innovation things that you guys are seeing out there that could potentially change the landscape?
Yeah, I mean, our team is as well as helping these startups is out there talking to restaurants to try and understand their biggest pain points. And some of those are around the labor challenges and not really understanding how to access the hourly workers. And when you're now competing not with a restaurant down the street, but with other kind of gig jobs.
So that is definitely a problem with the gig market. Things like shift gig and all of the other Craigslist ads. That's still an issue as a labor force?
Oh, I mean, it is. There are restaurants that can't open because they don't have enough people to be there. And when you think about creating a great place to work,
sure,
you know, they're really struggling thinking about what does it look like to be an employer now?
Yeah. Is it because it's too competitive?
Yeah, and they used to have to compete, you know, one restaurant to the other, but now you can just get in your car that you own and start driving, or you could sign up to walk someone's dog really simply as a worker, and you kind of string together multiple part-time jobs, which makes availability really difficult for a restaurant operator. So being able to say, like, you just need to be available all the time is truly a challenge, because a full-time job is actually strung together with all of these part-time jobs.
So the gig economy is essentially almost worked as a negative
for restaurant operators. Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Interesting.
Really. So that's a major one. I think actually making sense of all of the solutions that are out there is a huge problem for operators. We were talking to one last week who said he had 22 phone calls in a week from startups or service companies, solution-oriented companies trying to sell him solutions. Well, that's really a problem when he has literal fires to put out in his kitchen. And so he's actually putting out fires, and people are saying, can I show you my demo?
Right.
Can I show you this? Can I offer you this? And making those decisions and thinking about which one. It's not, there's not a shortage.
Right.
But, you know, there's that navigation. There are all of these third-party delivery platforms.
Right. Sure.
You go into restaurants and you see 10 tablets where they're trying to manage.
Each system talks, which system talks to which? The point of sale systems talk to another software.
So they're really struggling to understand even the profitability. They know they have to turn it on.
Sure.
The tablet on. But is it actually profitable?
Right.
And which items are profitable? And am I making money? Is the delivery company making money? Is the driver making any money?
Sure.
And consumers are actually questioning that too. When I see the fees associated with my third-party delivery, is the driver making anything?
Yeah. Is
the restaurant operator making anything? And, you know, that's a big struggle for these operators.
Yeah, especially if you get 3 or 4 systems as you're talking about talking to each other, or hopefully talking to each other. Are they making money? And what's the efficiency like after 7 or 8 people touch that one order, right?
Right. And if my restaurant was designed to accommodate a certain number of seats, that's hard to measure and manage any longer, because those seats, it's infinite. And so the actual kitchen space was designed for the tables and the chairs in the restaurant. but not always designed for all of these third-party platforms.
How are you guys working with, or do you work directly with, I guess, as it pertains to the Innovation Hub, Relish? Are you still working directly with restaurants, or are you relying on the companies that you're working with to do that?
Yeah, we definitely do both.
Okay.
So we're not going to, if we've made a commitment in a company that we're working with, a startup that we're working with in our program, or otherwise invested in, we're going to let them play in their space and own their space.
Awesome.
But there are spaces that we see that we haven't seen solved.
Right.
So group reservations and group dining was one of them. And so we wanted to tackle that. Labor matching restaurants to people wasn't one of them. So we created our own. So we find kind of the spaces that aren't being filled in what we perceive to be a unique way or a novel way, and we try to solve it in that novel way.
So you mentioned the labor force.
Yeah.
I think order efficiency. What was the one that you said that you created?
Poolside.
Poolside.
Yeah, that's around labor. Yeah.
So got it.
And so, Maureen Burns is the CEO of that company, and she's really working on how to crack this really complex environment of working in the restaurant industry. And it's just such a major challenge. So she's out in the world selling her services, but also always trying to learn and pivot as needed.
Yeah. So you mentioned some of those three things. What are the things in innovation is most exciting to you right now, between what Relish is doing, GFS, even the companies you're working with?
Something I'm really excited about is something we actually just wrapped up, was studying what fulfillment looks like in dense urban environments. So if we recognize that change is happening in cities faster, what does it look like to be a distributor in those cities? How is it different from suburban and rural environments? What will it require in terms of storage and inventory, warehousing? What will it look like in terms of our fleet? So thinking about today we have like 3 sizes of van and 2 sizes of trucks. But in the future, is that really going to serve our urban environments in the way that it needs to? And we're exploring, how do we make sure that the conveniences that people have come to expect in their personal life around 1-hour delivery, same day delivery, pay a little bit more for,
but they not have in the rural areas.
And how do we do that in a B2B context?
Right.
Because we know that what we're experiencing in our personal lives will translate to our expectations about how work gets done and the relationships that we have in this B2B environment.
As it relates to sustainability and innovation, what are some of the things that you are most excited about there? And I'd imagine there's a lot going on in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, waste, circular economies, thinking about how do we not let anything go to waste, reuse it in different ways. I think packaging, especially with people ordering all of this food, consuming all of it at their homes out of disposables, is a big space that there's going to be activity in as it relates to food service industry. So, when we were exploring what does the future of urban fulfillment look like, one of the lenses was an assumption that there will be more regulations around sustainability, that there will be an assumption we made in that exploration was that you wouldn't be able to deliver during peak times to reduce congestion
Emissions.
and emissions.
Interesting. Okay.
That you wouldn't be able to just throw pallets and packaging away, that we would have to really think about what does that look like, and who is doing that together, and that competitors will have to be collaborators, because there would be such a regulated environment around it that any one person couldn't function in the way that they are today. So we really took these kind of future perspectives to the extreme around kind of the vulnerability of cities when you think about flooding and fires and the things that are happening.
Right.
And how do you get goods to those zones, and not just recognizing that might be a more common reality.
Right. So what are some of the other things that you're most excited about in this space? I mean, I know you said something earlier about things growing on buildings, and we're here in downtown Chicago. You can see this. We have trees on top of the buildings, right?
Yes. I don't think it's very far off to imagine that, consumers today are already like obsessed with their health and wellness, and almost see food as an expression of their identity and what they stand for and their brand.
Whole Foods.
Yes. This is where I shop. This is where I went out to eat. I went to this restaurant. I had this.
Seems like, it's the experience.
Yes. And so the obsession with not only doing that, but then communicating it to the world on Instagram.
Yeah.
Will those same, or maybe it's now going to be like, whatever the next
food blogging.
Yes, exactly. And so I don't think it's too far off to imagine that the next bragging right is going to be how close the food was grown to your home, or how customized the food was to your particular diet.
I feel like it's kind of already happening, right? Even in the West Loop, just being right here in River North and in the West Loop of Chicago, it's like they have the farmers market that comes in every weekend, right? Everybody wants something that wants from Iowa, Michigan, Illinois, something that's locally grown, right? That's the whole thing. It's like the sustainability, local, organic, supporting local farmers.
Yes, there's just more of a commitment to both like the personal health and wellness, as well as the like health and wellness of the community around food, including the farmers, including the story, including all of the hands that touch the food, knowing that the tracking and the tracing and being able to tell the story, that's what consumers want. That's what they post about.
Yeah.
It's the story they're trying to tell the world about who they are and what they care about. And so, restaurants and food service operators are going to have to keep up, because those are the places and spaces where things are.
What do you see the biggest opportunities for that? Is it the smaller mom and pop restaurants or the chain restaurants? Who's your ideal target there?
Yeah, I think there are some, obvious like chains that are working in that space, like Sweetgreen. And then I think at an institutional level, when we think about food service operators and universities and campuses, they're being incentivized, to think about that being more sustainable, local. The independent food service operators have traditionally pushed the industry to be more provocative, to bring leading edge culinary expertise to the industry, but it's harder and harder to compete as an independent,
right?
And because you can't keep up with the technology, the economies of scale don't work out in your favor, and I think, to me, thinking about how to help create a thriving independent operator community is one of the biggest challenges and most exciting opportunities we have, because it is so important not just for Gordon Food Service, but for us as consumers.
Yeah.
We want to know that there is this group of people that are really pushing the boundaries and taking risky moves with both taste preferences, but also experiential kind of elements.
Very interesting. So can we talk a little bit more about the accelerator?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's 2 years old.
Yes.
7 companies just came through. Were they in any particular industries or that you decided to focus on?
Yeah. So the second cohort is starting January 13th.
Okay.
And we decided to kind of lean into solutions that help restaurant operators, more restaurant tech focused solutions that really help our operator customers run their business or manage aspects of their business,
Okay.
so that they can focus on
Right.
the food. And so that's where we decided this year.
Okay. More restaurant tech.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And we made that decision recognizing that is like a place where food service operators are struggling.
Right.
So
And
let's
you
see
have
what
all
we can do.
sizes of restaurants, right? They keep getting back to that, but it's like you have the mom and pops, you have the restaurant groups, the large chains, and the technology is constantly changing, right? So I think it's very smart that that's an area of focus.
Yeah. Anything that's relevant today there's going to be another version of it or an evolved version of it tomorrow. So there's never a reason not to do a scan of the space.
Sure.
And that's really what Food Foundry is. It's a very efficient way for us to go out in the world, scan the environment, get hundreds of applicants into our program, see what's happening. It's like an awareness aspect for our business.
Yeah.
And hopefully, we can be really friendly to these founders. And I would say that, our program to date has received that kind of feedback.
That's excellent. So how often does this run then?
We're going to do it once a year right now.
Okay.
But we are imagining ways in which we can extend the program in different forms. So
Excellent.
Once a year. And again, we graduated our first cohort last May of this year and starting the second one for 2020.
So I know we talked about some of the companies, but is there certain industries that you focus on, or restaurant tech is the big sort of theme this year, but certain industries inside of either inside of CPG or supply chain management or logistics that you guys are heavily focused on this year, or the next couple of years to come?
Yeah. So one thing we had traditionally a space we had not played was in CPG. So we wanted to, not for our accelerator program,
Okay.
we wanted to, recognizing that there's a lot of awesome programs out there
Okay.
and accelerator programs
Yeah.
in that space.
Sure.
So we really wanted to kind of push any of those applicants to other programs that we feel, affiliated with or, a relationship with in some way. And we traditionally hadn't focused on ag tech.
Okay.
So kind of
Agriculture technologies.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Which
things like
is-
precision farming or, people who are trying to imagine new food growth, manufacturing, or CPG. So we were kind of in the middle. So if that's farm to fork, we were more kind of supplier to operator.
Okay.
And thinking about, the supply chain, thinking about logistic technologies. But really then that was in our first year. And then this year it was like squarely, let's really get into the operator.
Right. Awesome.
Yeah.
What's next year?
I don't know. I think, it's so next summer already, though, we will need to have a focus because we go out, our team goes out and does an amazing job of in-person recruiting.
Uh-huh.
So I think mean, the team, I think this year went to maybe 12 or 15 cities, a lot of startup weeks, all summer long, spotting and
So you're going out seeking these companies?
Yes, and kind of promoting the Food Foundry. And then, leveraging our partnership with 1871 for recruiting. And we had, nearly 200 applicants this year, which was, 100 more than we received in the year prior. So for a 2-year-old accelerator program, or I guess one complete year.
So 200 down to 7 companies.
Yes. And so
how many weeks did that take you?
I think they probably did that. The team really went through this thoughtful and rigorous kind of scoring rubric and then in-person interviews with around 20 companies. And then, we narrowed it down to 7. And really when we thought about the space that we wanted to play and the spaces that could be most complementary to the overall strategy of the entire enterprise, it kind of bubbled up. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So this is truly an honor listening to all the things that you guys are doing. It's a wonderful and very needed thing in this space. I think 100% of the people listening to this will need the services, companies, and might even use GFS. So,
yeah, absolutely. Hopefully.
So Food Foundry and Relish Works. I think from the other end, if I'm hearing this, how do I work with you, right? How do I get my emerging growth company in with Relish Works, not only for the capital, but on the strategic partnership side as well?
Yeah, we're always looking for interesting partners to, solve our business needs or to enter into our next cohort for Food Foundry. And so there are 2 ways primarily to get in touch with us. One is relishworks.com. The other is thefoodfoundry.com. And you'll see all of our connections to our social handles through that.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for the innovation that you guys are doing in the space. Never heard of anything like it. Very much appreciate you joining us today. And for folks that want to find you, how can they look you up?
Oh, on my LinkedIn.
All right. You got it. Well, Mandy, thank you so much for being a part of it.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks so much.
You're listening to The Ecosystem, where we talk with the world's most exceptional entrepreneurs, investors, and emerging growth companies who are all making a difference in the world. This is your host, RJ Pahura, with our special guest today, Mandy Tahvonen. For more information, go to fundecosystem.com. Thanks for listening, and until next time, folks.